Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another video. The 24-25 college football season is completely wrapped up, but what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be reviewing and giving our recap and reaction on the 24-25 Alabama Crimson Tide football team, giving them a grade to how things turned out this season. There was a lot of build-up coming up to the Alabama team. You had Nick Saban retiring. You had Kalen Deboer taking over. A lot of build-up. Did they live up to that? Or were they a letdown this season? We're going to be giving you the grade. We're going to be grading the players, the coaching staff, and this team overall. First things first, though, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments about how Alabama did, good, bad, disagree, make sure to drop a comment below, and I will respond to everyone every week. We went over every single college football game for every single conference, all the way through the national championship. Props to the Ohio State Buckeyes. They are now the national champions. We also did the same thing for the NFL season, all the way up to the Super Bowl coming up in 2 weeks as of right now. And we're going to do it for basketball. We're going to do it for baseball, and we'll be picking it back up with football next season. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. But how about this 24-25 Alabama Crimson Tide? Like I mentioned earlier, you had the GOAT himself, Nick Saban, retiring, left this team with, as of the ESPN ranking, the number one overall roster in all of college football. Not the Bulldogs, not the Buckeyes, not the Irish, not the Ducks, not the Longhorns. They rated the Alabama Crimson Tide as the most stacked roster in all of college football when Nick Saban retired. So Kalen Deboer comes in here. This team is stacked top to bottom. He has the quarterback. He has Milroe, running backs, wide receivers, great defensive roster, playmakers up and down the field. He has Ryan Williams coming in, one of the best freshmen we've seen in modern college football history. How did they live up? They did not have a bad schedule. Coming into this season, Vegas was predicting them to come in with 9.5 wins. Now, if you go back and look, months and months ago, going back to May, June, July, I did a early preseason Alabama prediction video on what their final record would be. Vegas predicted them at 9.5. As we know, Alabama did disappoint. They did come in at the under. They came in, they went 9-4, counting the bowl loss. I predicted them to finish the regular season at 9-3. So we actually hit it right on the head with that. Things turned out the way they did. I said preseason, this is a team with a new coach, with a lot of holes on the offensive side. I said Jalen Milroe has all of the physical intangibles that you could ever want, but it's his short, intermittent passing game that scares the hell out of me. And that definitely showed up this season, continued to creep up, especially second half of the season. A guy throws a beautiful deep ball. He has the arm. He has the arm strength, but he is not accurate 15 yards and under in any way whatsoever. When he's throwing a screen pass, he throws it 100 miles an hour. He has zero touch on his short passes, but he has the touch on his deep passes. Now, a lot of people thought with Kalen Deboer coming in that they'd be able to work on that passing game. We know that Deboer always has elite level passing offenses. It just did not translate over to Milroe. Was that Kalen Deboer's fault? Was that Milroe's fault? We don't know as of right now, because all the other quarterbacks Deboer's had, they played well. Maybe it was just they're not set for the right scheme together. We're going to find out this season, because obviously Milroe, he's now off to the NFL. He did declare for the draft, so he's going to be gone. So Alabama's going to have to kind of tap into that roster they have. They have a lot of 4- and 5-star quarterbacks on this roster. They're going to be battling it out. Let's see where they take it from here. But Alabama did disappoint the Vegas odds coming in at the under, but we actually hit the nail on the head with them finishing the regular season 9-3. So we were spot on. I said there's holes in that wide receiver core. There's holes on their offensive line. There's holes in their running back room, and I had major questions about Milroe. All four of those things continued to be issues this season. On the defensive side, they did not finish with a bad overall defensive record, but they were underwhelming. Probably the worst Alabama defense we've seen since Nick Saban first came to the Alabama Crimson Tide back in the early 2000s. It's been about 2 decades since we've seen an Alabama team give up just shy of 20 points per game. Looking at these overall team rosters, you had Milroe coming in here, did not have a bad season, but did not have the season a lot of people thought that he would have coming into this year. He finished with 2,800 yards, 16 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, by no means accurate, 64.8% completion percentage. He was also the leading rusher on this team. When you're the leading rusher, it's going to create a lot of problems. They were not able to get the running back room going. This is Alabama. Number 1 class, number 2 class, nobody stepped up in the running back room in order to take some pressure off of Milroe. When you cannot consistently run the ball as a team, you can't use the play action. Milroe is the type of quarterback, he needs systematic play action passes to push the ball down the field. Looking in the running back room here, he did lead the way, 726 yards on the ground, 4.3 average, 20 rushing touchdowns. When you add that to his passing touchdowns, 36 overall touchdowns. That would add up to be a not bad season by any means whatsoever, but careless mistakes when you needed it. Your leading rusher should not only have 726 yards, Bama should consistently every season have 1,000-yard running backs. You can blame that on, well, you can't really blame it on the roster. You can blame it on the coaching and scheming in order to get that running back room going. You had Miller, 668 yards. You had Haynes, 448 yards. Nothing at the running back position. That was a major issue for Alabama that is going to affect their grade. Looking at the wide receiver core, they did not have a consistent playmaker outside of Ryan Williams, coming in at 865 yards, 8 touchdowns. He had massive games, and then he completely disappeared for some times. You gotta scheme that guy into the game no matter what the score is. No matter what the game is, you have to find a way to get your playmakers the ball. But again, Milroe sometimes was completely inaccurate pushing the ball to him, throwing the ball in the dirt, sailing the ball too high. Consistent issues he's had since last season, not being accurate in that short to mid-range passing game. They had Bernard, they had Dipri, they had Cuevas. Looking overall as this team, on the offense, they came in, they were averaging 250.8 passing yards per game, 173.8 rushing yards per game, but a lot of that was led by the quarterback, Milroe. They were averaging 28.1 on the kick returning, so special teams wasn't too bad. As of right now, on the defensive side, they came in, they were giving up 17.8 points a game. Not in any way bad on the defensive side. They scored 33.2 points per game. The offense, that's not going to be good enough to win in modern college football. You got to be that 35 to at least 40 range in order to compete, make a run into the playoffs. As of right now, Bama has consistently been making the playoffs, been making the national championship under Nick Saban. Saban retires, Bama fails to make the playoffs the first season without Nick Saban, and the playoffs were expanded from 4 all the way to 12 teams, and Bama still found their way outside of the playoffs. Whether you're a Bama fan or not, me personally, I made the case Alabama did not deserve to make the playoffs. Like, take a look at their schedule. Let's see why. They started out the season great. The offense is rolling. They beat Western Kentucky 63-0. Then they play USF. They don't play them as bad as they played them the previous season. Got the offense clicking first half. They win that one 42-16. Milroe starting to get a lot of Heisman talk right now. Kalen Deboer has this team rolling. They're playing offense. They're playing defense. They roll into Madison, Wisconsin. The game's close, first, second quarter. Then they blow the Badgers out 42-10, 3-0. They play the Georgia Bulldogs. This was like number 1 versus 2 at this time. They took a massive early lead. Georgia fought their way all the way back, took the lead, and then Alabama closed the door shut. They beat Georgia. They moved up to the number 1 team in the nation. They were sailing high right now, most talented roster, and they're number 1 in the driver's seat in the SEC. And then they go to Vanderbilt, and they get the crap kicked out of them by Vanderbilt. Yes, I said they got the crap kicked out of them. They lost 42-35 to Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt in front of about 3 or 4 students in the stand. They got pushed up and down the field at the line of scrimmage. Embarrassing loss, but it is what it is. You can still fight your way back from that. They go to South Carolina. They should have lost that game, but they pull it out. They win that one 27-25. Then they go to Tennessee, and they lose. Tennessee with a top 10 defense, top 10 offense at the time, and Josh Heupel's team pulls it off 24-17. Now they're sitting at 5-2. People are starting to murmur, but there's still a lot left in front of you. If you finish 10-2 in the SEC, you're still going to make the playoffs. They play Missouri, shut them out. That's as good of a rebound win as you could have asked for, 34-0. Then they beat LSU, 42-13. They're rising up to the top 10 right now. A lot of hype. They beat Mercer, 52-7, obviously. And then one of the worst losses of the 24-25 college football season as a whole, they lose to Oklahoma at Oklahoma 24-3, and they were 21.5 favorites in that game. They got the crap kicked out of them. We're not able to score an offensive or a defensive touchdown the entire game. Milroe had 4 or 5 turnovers that game. He was fumbling the ball. He was throwing picks. Looked awful. That game pretty much summed up the Alabama season. That loss in itself kept them out of the playoffs. Yes, they won versus Auburn, but the damage was done. They were number 12, and when SMU lost that game, Clemson pushed their way into that final 12 and pushed Alabama out. And then they went to the bowl game. They were favorites in the bowl game, and then, of course, they lose to Michigan. Michigan dominates them, pummels them on both lines of scrimmage, the offensive line, the defensive line. People can't say that Bama didn't have heart. Michigan had a lot of players out. A lot of their first-round draft pick guys didn't even play that game. Alabama had their entire offensive roster, including Milroe, and they came into that game and they sucked and they lost it 19-13. Finished the season as a whole 9-4. So what grade are we going to give them? It is a disappointing season, yes, but it is to be expected. If you are an Alabama fan, do not worry. Do not start to panic. You had to expect a little bit of a step back. Nick Saban is the GOAT. Whether you love the guy, whether you hate the guy, he's the GOAT when it comes to college football. When the GOAT retires, you have to expect some type of step back, at least in the short term. If things just continue the same, go parallel, then he wasn't the GOAT, because anybody can technically do his job with the roster. It shows just how great of a coach Nick Saban was. No matter who they played, you got the same performance from that team week in, week out. Nick Saban rarely, if ever, got the doors blown off of him. Even when they lost, they fought hard and they lost. That was not the case for this Alabama team this season. But it's a new coach installing his new mentality on the team. We saw a little more of an undisciplined Alabama this season. Guys kicking the ball, guys being selfish. That's not characteristic of an Alabama team, and it shouldn't be going forward. Kalen Deboer has to nip that in the bud right now. Overall, though, even though they finished 9-3, even though they missed the playoffs, when it was expanded to 12, they finished the season ranked 17. That would have been unheard of had Nick Saban been the coach this season. There would have been hell to pay if he let that happen. He would have never let that happen, but it happened under Kalen Deboer. But it is year one. I give Alabama a B- score. I do not give them a C. They still finished top 25. They finished number 17. They beat Georgia. They still had high moments throughout the season, high highs, and then they had some really low lows. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, but still the foundation set, but the SEC is getting more difficult going forward. Oklahoma is going to be better than they were this past season. Texas is continuing to build those blocks. Those are new teams to the SEC. The SEC got deeper, it got tougher, and the GOAT himself is out. So the conference basically right now, it is up for grabs. Georgia was not the team that they've been previously, but maybe Kalen Deboer. Foundation is set. They continue to recruit at a high level. They continue to work that portal. The future is still bright. Nobody panic. You can't win the national championship every season. I know it happened under Nick Saban. Enjoy it while you had it. Bama came down the earth, but they still have all those foundational pieces to have continued success in the future. I give them a B-. They missed the playoffs. That's unacceptable for how talented this roster is. That's what drops them from a B+, A-, all the way down to a B-. That loss to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, you just cannot overlook that. But that's our reaction, our breakdown, our team grade for the Alabama Crimson Tide. A decent so-so season for first-year Kalen Deboer, but it is massive shoes to fill. That is stressful. Next season, stress should be a little less because you're now a full year removed from Nick Saban. Guys, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below, and I will respond. Thank you.